Panasonic. I hate to say this, but I'm tired of waiting. I've been shooting with primarily Panasonic camera bodies in wildlife photography for the past years in hopes of the huge potential I see in them as a company. However, lately I've been getting really tired of waiting on what could be and need to come to terms with what is. This video is a complete dive into my experience with Panasonic camera bodies and lenses, what I've liked about them and haven't liked about them over the years, and why right now I'm not wanting to stick around anymore. This video will start out with my story of my experience and get to the more technical later on, so stick around if you're wanting to get into some more of the nitty-gritty. I should also clarify that this video only discusses Panasonic's interchangeable lens cameras, so I won't be discussing any of their budget and beginner super zoom cameras or others like this. Before we move on, let me introduce the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. As anyone who follows me knows, recently I just hosted the 2024 Wilder Photography Competition and couldn't have done so without Squarespace. With their online storefront and intuitive design tools, I was able to build a website for the competition that outlines everything that a participant needs to know in a way that's aesthetic yet easy to understand. Then give them the option to enter. Clearly, using Squarespace works, as this year we received 815 submissions to the competition. Their email marketing also comes in handy, as many of you know that I send out a newsletter called the Wilder Leaflet that includes an exclusive discount from a sponsor each month. And I've also been using Squarespace to email over invoices to clients directly during some of my one-on-one sessions. Their invoicing tools directly through Squarespace make it easy for me to set up a one-time payment for a client to pay. And if you're interested in trying Squarespace for yourself, head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/JeremyKnipe to receive 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. My journey with Panasonic starts back long ago before this, but the real moment that Panasonic prominently entered the wildlife scene, in my opinion, was with the G9 in the end of 2017. For people looking for lots of reach on a low budget, the G9 could offer up to a 600mm full frame equivalent with their budget lens for around $2,000 total. But not only this, it had the highest viewfinder resolution available in any interchangeable lens camera at the time, some world-leading IBIS, and it could shoot in something called pre-burst, an unheard of feature at the time that let you capture images before the shutter was fully pressed. Other cameras were 3 times the amount, lacked some of these innovative and important specs. And while the G9 had some drawbacks still with its MFT sensor quality, noise control, and only up to a 20 megapixel resolution, it still was enough for many enthusiasts. And besides the professionals, many people found this camera appealing and perfect for their budget and use cases. The G9 really gave me a sense of hope about where Panasonic was headed with its affordability and its unique focus on features that most cameras had neglected. So I bought it. Making no money off my wildlife photography at the time, it was the perfect financial sweet spot for me of not being the cheapest out there, but also not going to break my bank. And for the price, I truly don't believe I could have gotten much better at the time. Now, fast forward almost 2 years, and Panasonic releases their first set of full-frame cameras. In my opinion, they hit the mark, but with one very important flaw. For the past 2 years, Panasonic was being roasted for their extremely subpar autofocusing system, and for good reason. Especially as a wildlife photographer, I never found my autofocus reliable enough to capture birds when out shooting, so I literally shot everything in manual focus. Yet 2 years later, Panasonic refused to budge on developing their autofocus system into phase detect, and they had paid the price. The common consensus was that Panasonic cameras weren't worth it due to these problems in focus alone, regardless of the other perks. For me, however, I had grown quite accustomed to using manual focus and started to feel more comfortable doing that than autofocusing, even with cameras that were the gold standard at the time. So I went out and got myself a good deal on the Panasonic S1R and started using that as my go-to. Over the next few years, other companies started leaving Panasonic cameras in the dust. Sony started to really take over, Nikon and Canon started their mirrorless lineups that they claimed they would never switch to, and Olympus rebranded to OM Systems and started to take over the MFT market for wildlife photography. Many times I debated on switching, but ultimately I stuck it out in hopes that Panasonic would once again be that innovative, budget-friendly brand that I came to love in 2017. And I was halfway there. In the beginning of 2023, Panasonic released the S5 II, a full-frame camera at a ridiculously affordable price point, and some incredible low-noise imagery. Most importantly, however, it included their updated autofocus that put them close to on par with other leading brands. They had started to make their comeback with this first step into the competitive world, but to be honest, they still lacked the oomph that other brands had. The S5 II rode off their incredible price, and they had the standard necessities for a wildlife photographer, but they didn't really dominate other cameras or show them up in really any ways. But for me, this was a step in the right direction at least, and gave me hope of what was to come once again, assuming that they would release a better version and a flagship with this new autofocus system. It also confirmed with me that Panasonic would continue to be the budget-friendly brand I've always known, and if I stuck with them, I'd be getting my gear at 75% the prices of the big three names. The way they also included so many features in the S5 II that users had been calling for in the past years also confirmed with me that they listened to their customers' feedback, which I liked, as opposed to brands like Canon and Nikon that often refused for many years to go to the needs of the consumer base for what they wanted. But now that brings us here. It's the end of 2024, and we are still yet to have a flagship camera from Panasonic that can fill the needs I have as a professional. In fact, Panasonic decided to announce a newly refreshed S5 instead, which is mind-blowing considering that everyone I know considers the S5 II to be a massive step forward from the S5. So why would you do this? Were there lots of S5 bodies in inventory that they needed to find a way to move quickly, or what's going on there? All that to say, I found myself disappointed that I've had to wait this long for getting another full-frame camera from Panasonic that can compete with other brand flagships. At this point, it's been almost 5 years since we had a flagship release from them. Things need to change. I hope my experience gives you some insight into why I'm frustrated in my current state with Panasonic and what's brought me to make a video like this. Generally, while I like to try out new gear and talk about it all the time, it's a lot of money for the average person to switch their camera brand, and so because of this very reason, I've held off personally for so long. But I'm getting to the point where I can no longer wait much more. And unless something changes soon, I'll be finding myself shooting with a new camera brand next year. So let's talk some technicals about what I feel like needs to change with Panasonic and what's missing from them at the moment. To start off, when it comes to the MFT world, I'd actually still argue to say that Panasonic is competing with OM systems at the top. So if you'd like the MFT system and you want to stay on it, I'd argue to say that Panasonic is still a great fit for you at the moment. Price and features wise, their flagships are pretty much directly on par with OM systems, and both have proven themselves worthy of an amateur camera at the very least. They both excel above the other in a few ways, in my opinion, whether that be Panasonic's slightly more refined pre-burst or OM system's slightly better image stabilization. You really can't go wrong between these two. But when it comes to those of us who are interested in the full frame market, Panasonic is still lagging behind Sony AF in capabilities, Canon in recording formats, and Nikon in electronic shutter speeds, and compared to all brands, Panasonic is behind in lens availability, blackout-free viewfinders, burst rates, read and write speeds, and the list goes on. If Panasonic can achieve most all these things and catch up to the competition, then I have confidence that they could surpass them with either their consistently more affordable, bang for buck price points that they offer, or by inventing some new features that shape our camera world like they have in the past. But at this point, I think they've kind of forgotten about us full frame wildlife photographers, and it might be time to realize that. My belief in them as a brand can only last for so long without significant results, and their cameras are oriented towards videographers much more than photographers nowadays. And their target audience seems to currently be the mid-tier price point of creators and commercial work, not those who are out and about in the field like you and me. Let me summarize this video like this. I hope that I see Panasonic make some big changes in the full frame format for us wildlife photographers soon. And if so, I can see myself sticking with the brand, at least for the time being, so that I don't have to spend obscene amounts of money switching over to a whole new setup. Even if it's simply on par with current competition, I'd most likely be more than happy to take the deal. But if they can't implement some of those necessary flagship quality standards nowadays, I may very well find myself on a new camera brand next year. If you're shooting Panasonic, I hope this video gives you some insight into where I'm at personally in my thought process, and hopefully it can help you process how you'd like to move forward in the future too. But ultimately, the decision is up to you. If you want to see my review on the Panasonic G9 II that I've been talking about a lot in this video, and that I actually do still think is a good choice for MFT by Panasonic, you can check out this video in the end screen here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.